He'd fallen down near the stove and was just dead. And I called Mrs. Tracy and the kids, and they came.
Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn's love story was one of Hollywood's biggest secrets, kept hidden for years. But the real surprise isn't their affair, it's the connection between Hepburn and Tracy's wife, Louise. A wife who wouldn't leave, a mistress who stayed, and a man torn by guilt and religion. This isn't just a love triangle, it's a story of heartbreak, loyalty, and strength through impossible decisions. And before diving into the relationship between Hepburn and Tracy, let's first explore a bit of the background. Spencer Tracy was born on April 5, 1900, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His father was a Catholic truck salesman, and his mother came from a wealthy family. Spencer grew up in a strict household where religion played a big role. He was a difficult child, always getting into trouble and skipping school. Despite this, Spencer was still a rebel and spent most of his free time watching movies. He loved them so much that he would act out scenes for his friends, showing early signs of the actor he would become. His Catholic upbringing influenced his whole life, making him feel guilty about things like his affairs and separation from Louise. Louise Treadwell was born on July 31, 1896, in Newcastle, Pennsylvania. From a young age, she was independent and determined, traits that shaped her entire life. After finishing college in 1917, she tried different jobs, including being a teacher and a journalist. But what she really loved was acting and dancing. In 1914, she gave vaudeville a shot, but her time in New York City didn't last long. Still, she didn't give up and joined theater groups, improving her craft over the years. By 1923, she became the leading actress in the Leonard Wood Players, a theater company in White Plains, New York. That's where she met Spencer Tracy. They connected right away, both on and off the stage. Spencer admired Louise's talent and intelligence, and she saw his raw charm and determination. They quickly fell in love and got married just a few months later, in September 1923. Spencer, only 23, was so nervous that he forgot the wedding ring. In a pinch, he borrowed one from his best man. After the wedding, they rushed straight back to New York to continue performing. There was no time for a honeymoon, and this rushed start set the tone for their busy and often challenging life together. Their first child, John, was born on June 26, 1924, just 9 months after their wedding. But when John was 10 months old, Louise noticed something that changed everything. She was putting him to sleep when a door slammed loudly nearby. John didn't even flinch. Worried, she stood by his crib, calling his name and even shouting, but he stayed asleep. Her heart sank. Later, doctors confirmed that John was deaf, likely from birth. While Spencer struggled, Louise decided to fight for her son. At that time, most deaf children were sent to institutions, but Louise refused to accept that for John. She read every book she could find about deafness and spent hours each day teaching him to lip read and speak. Her hard work paid off when John said his first word, "Mama," at age 3. In 1932, their second child, Susie, was born. Unlike John, Susie had normal hearing, and her arrival brought both happiness and more complications to the family. Spencer, still feeling guilty about John's deafness, became very protective of Susie, sometimes giving her extra attention. Meanwhile, the problems in their marriage became too much. One cold night, Louise packed her bags and left for New York, leaving their children with Spencer. Their son, John, who was deaf, needed care, but Spencer was drinking heavily and chasing women. For almost 2 years, they lived apart. By 1935, they decided to give the marriage another try, but things didn't go back to normal. Spencer was now working with MGM, and part of their reunion included him paying a huge $78,000 debt for taxes and support, a fortune at the time. They moved back in together, but he stayed in a separate bedroom. It wasn't really a marriage anymore. They were living separate lives, just sharing responsibilities. Spencer had been unfaithful from the start of his Hollywood career. His most talked-about affair was with actress Loretta Young in 1933 while filming Man's Castle. People even saw them going to church together, which was strange given his cheating. By 1934, his bad behavior was out of control. During the filming of Marie Galante, he disappeared for days and was found drunk in a Brooklyn hotel. The delay cost the studio a lot of money and nearly destroyed his career. Katharine Hepburn met Spencer Tracy in 1942 while working on the film Woman of the Year. It was a romantic comedy about two people who were complete opposites falling in love, and their real-life connection felt just as magical as the story. Hepburn, who was known for her bold personality, introduced herself to Tracy with a cheeky comment. "I fear I may be too tall for you, Mr. Tracy." Tracy, or maybe someone else nearby, quickly shot back. "Don't worry, I'll cut you down to size." It was a playful start that set the tone for their relationship. Sharp, funny, and filled with respect. At first, things were all business. Tracy was quiet and focused, while Hepburn was loud and full of energy. But it didn't take long for their connection to grow. Soon, they were calling each other Spence and Kate, and their natural chemistry lit up the set. Audiences loved the film, and critics couldn't stop praising their performances. The movie was a hit, but it was also the beginning of something much bigger, a relationship that would last 26 years. Hepburn admitted she fell for Tracy almost immediately. At the time, she was 34 and doing well in her career after bouncing back from some early failures. Tracy, who was 41, was already a big star with 2 Oscars to his name. Hepburn thought he was irresistible, and everyone could see the spark between them both on and off the screen. But there was one big problem. Tracy was married. Even though his marriage to Louise Treadwell was rocky, Tracy refused to get a divorce because of his strong Catholic beliefs. This made things complicated, but Hepburn didn't let it stop her. She accepted the situation, knowing their relationship would always have to stay private. Tracy was battling his own struggles, including alcoholism and health issues, and Hepburn became his rock. She admired his talent and strength, but also saw the vulnerable side of him that needed care. Over time, they became inseparable, even if they couldn't be open about it. In 1958, after 35 years of marriage and 16 years of Spencer Tracy's affair with Katharine Hepburn, Louise Treadwell Tracy made a bold statement. "I will be Mrs. Spencer Tracy until the day I die." Louise was deeply committed to their family, especially their son John, who was born deaf in 1924. In 1962, she told reporters, "I've told him to go out with other people. I haven't minded because he always told me about it." While this seemed like she was being accepting, it was her way of reminding the world that she was the true Mrs. Tracy. Louise kept her word until her death in 1983, at 87 years old. She never remarried and never openly talked about Spencer's relationship with Hepburn. Katharine Hepburn, on the other hand, was known for being strong and independent, but her role in Spencer's life was surprising. For 26 years, she stayed the other woman. She didn't try to break up Spencer's marriage or push for a divorce. Instead, she kept quiet about their relationship and even denied it to the public. Hepburn's friend Lauren Bacall once said, "She loved him completely, and he gave her what she needed." It might not seem like love to others, but for her, it was. Spencer Tracy's Catholic faith made his life even more complicated. He believed his son John's deafness was God's punishment for his sins, a thought that haunted him and drove his drinking. His guilt over his affair with Hepburn was just as heavy. Although he lived apart from Louise for decades, he refused to divorce her because of his religion. During the filming of It's a Mad, 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 Mad World in 1963, he told a co-star, "I could get a divorce whenever I want to, but my religion won't allow it." Even when staying at Hepburn's home, Spencer kept separate quarters, telling himself this made his actions less sinful. But his struggles with guilt and faith often left him moody, depressed, and difficult to work with. For 25 years, the affair between Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn was one of Hollywood's biggest open secrets. The public didn't know, but everyone in the film industry did. Studios worked hard to protect Spencer's image, and MGM's head, Louis B. Mayer, once said, "That goddamn Hepburn is ruining my biggest star." Even when Confidential magazine threatened to expose the affair in 1957, the story was stopped with legal threats. On movie sets, their relationship was impossible to miss. Co-stars often saw them sitting on a bench during breaks, holding hands and talking quietly. Director George Cukor, who worked with them many times, said, "I would have done anything for Tracy." Officially, Spencer lived at the Beverly Hills Hotel, but most nights he stayed with Hepburn. Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy had one of Hollywood's most famous partnerships. Over 25 years, they worked on 9 films together, starting with Woman of the Year in 1942 and ending with Guess Who's Coming to Dinner in 1967. Even though they were close in real life, they never practiced their scenes at home. They believed in keeping their personal and work lives separate. This may have been why their connection on screen felt so real and unforced. Movies like Adam's Rib and Pat and Mike showed this chemistry perfectly, with director George Cukor helping bring out the best in them. Audiences loved seeing Tracy and Hepburn together, and their films made a lot of money. Their first movie, Woman of the Year, was a big success, earning $2.7 million in 1942, which was a huge amount back then. Years later, their final movie, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, became their biggest hit, making $56.7 million in 1967. Even their less popular films like Keeper of the Flame still managed to make a profit. Their pairing was so strong that they stayed popular even when Hollywood changed a lot in the 1950s and 60s. Their connection on screen was so good that it inspired other famous duos. For example, the characters Sam and Diane in the TV show Cheers were based on their playful but intense style. Even though they were together off-screen, they acted like true professionals on set. A director once said that when they worked, it was as if they didn't even know each other. This focus helped them play all kinds of characters, from rivals in Adam's Rib to a long-married couple in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Every role felt believable because of how natural they were together. Their teamwork helped both of their careers. Tracy was already a well-known actor, but 5 of his 9 Oscar nominations came from movies he made with Hepburn. For Hepburn, the partnership saved her career. In the late 1930s, people had stopped watching her movies, and she was called box office poison. But working with Tracy brought her back to the top. Together, they also tackled important topics in their films, like gender roles and race, which might have been too risky for either of them to do alone. Spencer Tracy's health began to fail rapidly in the 1960s, after years of heavy drinking and poorly managed diabetes. By 1963, his condition had become so serious that he collapsed from pulmonary edema while at Katharine Hepburn's beach house. 2 years later, in 1965, He underwent major prostate surgery that left him even weaker. Despite his deteriorating health, Tracy was determined to finish his final film, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, in 1967. Filming was incredibly difficult for him. He could only work for 2 or 3 hours a day and often needed oxygen between takes. His hands shook so badly that, as Hepburn recalled, he struggled to hold a coffee cup. His doctor revealed that Tracy required near-constant medical attention in his final years, either for real health crises or simply for emotional support. Still, Tracy's sharp wit remained intact. During the filming of his last movie, he joked to the director, "Even if I drop dead tonight, you can still release the picture." Beneath the humor, however, was the grim reality of a body slowly giving out. Katharine Hepburn devoted herself entirely to caring for Spencer Tracy during his final years. From 1961 until his death in 1967, she put her career on hold, turning down film roles to stay by his side. Hepburn moved into a small cottage on George Cukor's estate where Tracy lived, so she could be with him around the clock. She managed his medications, cooked his meals, and even learned how to give him injections when needed. Her niece later revealed that Hepburn became so familiar with Tracy's illnesses that she often knew more about his daily condition than his doctors. Despite her unwavering care, Hepburn was careful to stay out of sight whenever Tracy's wife, Louise, visited, preserving the appearance of separation. As Tracy's health worsened, Hepburn's dedication became even more intense. She memorized his lines for Guess Who's Coming to Dinner and fed them to him off camera when his memory faltered. In his final weeks, she slept on the floor outside his bedroom door so she could respond immediately if he needed her. On June 10, 1967, just 17 days after completing his last film, Spencer Tracy passed away. That night, feeling unwell, he went to bed early. Around 3 a.m., he got up to make himself a cup of tea in the kitchen. Hepburn, sleeping nearby, heard him moving but stayed where she was. When he didn't return to his room, she went to check on him and found him collapsed on the kitchen floor, clutching his chest. She tried desperately to help, but Tracy was pronounced dead a few hours later, at 6 a.m. The cause was a heart attack, though his doctor later revealed that Tracy's body had been in decline for months, with multiple organ systems failing. His last words to Hepburn were bittersweet. "I'll be all right, Kate. Just get some sleep." 2 days later, Tracy's funeral took place. It was a small, private service attended by about 50 people. Hepburn, who had been Tracy's constant companion for years, was not among them. She had promised Tracy long ago that their relationship would remain private, even after his death, out of respect for his wife, Louise. While the funeral took place, Hepburn went to Tracy's house alone. Using her key, she let herself in and walked through the empty rooms, touching his belongings and weeping. She later admitted that she spent the day holding his favorite hat, unable to part with it. Her absence from the funeral was noticed by the press, but no one knew the real reason at the time. For 16 years after Spencer Tracy passed away, Katharine Hepburn kept completely silent about their relationship. Nobody knew what she thought or felt, and that silence only made people more curious. Then, in 1983, everything changed. After Louise, Tracy's wife, died, Hepburn finally opened up about her decades-long affair with Tracy. She talked about it in interviews and in her autobiography, Me, Stories of My Life. Her honesty shocked everyone. She called Tracy tortured and admitted, "I would have done anything for him." This was the first time anyone really understood how deeply she cared for him, but it also sparked a lot of debate. Why did she wait until both Tracy and Louise were gone? Was it fair to share such personal secrets after they could no longer speak for themselves? Her revelation made people question how much of Hollywood's golden age was real and how much was carefully hidden. Their story wasn't just a simple love affair, it was messy and complicated. Tracy was married to Louise for all 26 years of his relationship with Hepburn. This love triangle became one of Hollywood's most famous, challenging ideas about marriage, loyalty, and love. It even inspired parts of pop culture, like the characters Sam and Diane from Cheers. Over time, more details came out. In 2018, Scotty Bowers, a man who worked in Hollywood's shadowy circles, claimed Tracy and Hepburn's relationship was a cover for their true sexual orientations. This added a whole new layer to their story, though not everyone believed it. Even decades later, people are still fascinated by their relationship. It's a mix of forbidden love, guilt, and the struggles of living in the public eye during a time when the world was far less accepting. Their relationship didn't just change their lives, it changed Hollywood itself. For nearly 3 decades, Tracy and Hepburn managed to keep their bond mostly private, even though they were 2 of the biggest stars in the world. This was unheard of at the time, when studios controlled every part of a celebrity's image. Their ability to stay out of the spotlight inspired future stars to demand more control over their personal lives. But their story also revealed the double standards of their time. Tracy, as a man, could quietly navigate infidelity, but women in Hollywood often faced harsh criticism for even a hint of scandal. On screen, their chemistry was undeniable. They made 9 films together, creating one of the most beloved partnerships in movie history. Behind the scenes, studio heads like Louis B. Mayer allowed their relationship to continue because it kept the money flowing, even though their contracts had strict moral clauses. When Tracy died in 1967, his will surprised a lot of people. His estate was worth just over $1 million, which would be about $8 million today. After expenses, it was reduced to $664,147. Louise inherited all of it, half through the will and half as community property. This left many wondering why Tracy left nothing for Hepburn, despite their 26-year relationship. Did this mean he felt more loyalty to Louise? The family home, valued at $200,000, became a central part of the inheritance. Interestingly, Tracy's secretary, Carol, received his personal items, including 2 Thunderbirds, suggesting she played a bigger role in his life than most people realized. Amid all this drama, Louise Tracy's work with the John Tracy Clinic stands out as a lasting legacy. She started the clinic in 1942 to help families of deaf children, inspired by her own son John, who was born deaf. By 1972, the clinic was helping families in 94 countries and offering programs in 15 languages. Hollywood played a big role in its success, with stars like Walt Disney lending their support. Disney even served on the clinic's board and helped create educational films. Despite his personal struggles, Spencer Tracy donated over $500,000 to the clinic during his lifetime. Today, renamed the John Tracy Center, the clinic continues to offer free services to families, helping thousands of children every year. It's a powerful reminder of how personal pain can be turned into something that changes the world for the better.